And let's see if we can't finish this, the 12th chapter of The Whispering Mountain by Joan Aiken. Owen and Bilk and Prigman have spotted the harp in the hands of a little person, Abipol, and are giving him chase. Luckily, the way they were going lay all downhill. Owen, having passed 2 hours in a tree and spent much of the day helping to carry the Prince of Wales, was already somewhat fatigued. Had he been obliged to run uphill, he would soon have fallen behind. As it was, being young and light on his feet, he was able to keep up tolerably well in the rear of the heavy, blundering Bilk and the stout, short-legged Prigman. How far Abipol was ahead of them, he could not tell, nor where they were going. The passage they had taken seemed to lead deeper and deeper into the heart of the mountain. Little by little, however, it widened. At last they emerged onto a sort of platform or quayside overlooking an underground river. Erebus would have recognized the spot. A pale glimmer of light from far ahead illuminated the scene. "Gone to ground," said Bilk with an oath. "The little ferret's diddled us." "No, he hasn't done to head. He's taken to water. Don't you see where we are? This here's the Mannon River, goes all the way to Port Mannon, and the hot pipes carrying steam to the castle lays at the bottom. At the bottom of it, I know, because when I was a kitchen boy at the castle, I used to carry their peck of coves. I used to carry their peck to the coves. What was a laying, excuse me, of the pipes." "And so," growled Bilk, "how does that advantage us?" "Why, you nodcock, our little twanger's taken boat downstream. All we need do is follow him, and he'll navigate himself right into the fox's mouth, right to old Stigmatical's castle. How's that for a gaudy fine shift? We've got him in Lipsbury Pinfold, if we do but follow." "How about the young Whisperer? We don't want him on our tail." "Oh, we lost him a dozen turns back. He'll not fret us again. Come on, there's another boat." "That walnut show? I'm not trusting my quorums in that." "Oh, don't be so poor-stomached." Bilk, however, insisted that it would be quicker to run along the bank. Accordingly, they set off into the dark. Owen, who had only waited in the shadows until they were out of earshot, immediately leapt into the little skiff that Bilk had mistrusted, undid the mooring rope, and launched off downstream in pursuit. The boat, which appeared to be made of leather with the fur left on, was very light and rocked wildly until Owen, who at a young age had been taught seamanship by his father, discovered the knack of kneeling motionless amidships and helping the fragile craft downstream with two triangular wooden flaps evidently intended as paddles. Gliding along not far behind in the shadow of the rock bank, Owen was able to overhear a few snatches of Bilk and Prigman's conversation. "When we've prigged the bandor off the little whiskered cove," puffed Prigman, pounding along the towpath, "there's a way up into the castle from that hole where the central heating pipes rises out of the river. Up a lot of steps it goes, through the cellars where his worship keeps his barrels of booze, and the queerkins where he stows the prisoners. I'll lay you used to find your way into the cellars, if not the dungeons," grunted Bilk, toiling beside him. "Ah, and I did. I was always a rare hand as a rester, even when I was a boy. Could pick my way through any locked up jail in the land with a blade of grass and a goose feather and a drop of oil." "That's handy then," panted Bilk. "Us can go up the back way with the bandor when we've slit little Caliban's weasand." "No call for that," said Prigman, who seemed to have curious objections to out-and-out murder. "Us can tie him and leave him to cool in one of they vaults, where the tide will come in and cover him." "I say slit his weasand. Look what's happened with the other one. He got away and spoilt our lay. Trouble he may be to us yet, rot him. His lordship might want to see this one, to make sure we're telling a true tale. He can see him just as well with a slit weasand. Carry him up those stairs, not on your elephant." They were still arguing this point when Owen realized that their voices were drawing farther and farther ahead. Peering down to discover the reasons for this, he saw that he was kneeling in warm water. Evidently his boat had struck and holed up on some sharp underwater rock, and was slowing down. There were no bales. He was obliged to beach the boat, empty it, and launch off again. It filled once more, this time much faster, and there was nothing for it but to take to land. His rest afloat had done him good, and he set off with renewed energy. But he had lost a good deal of time, and the thieves were now out of sight in the long tunnel which followed the underground course of the Malin River. Owen ran desperately. When at last he suddenly burst into a vast empty cavern, he saw the central heating pipes climbing the opposite wall like huge silver snakes. Bilk and Prigman had vanished. Collecting himself, Owen looked around and saw that there were numerous openings leading out of the big cave. His only course was to try each in turn. He investigated several. Some led to smaller empty caves. One passage, after much turning and winding, led him out onto the stony hillsides above Port Malin. Behind him, Malin Castle frowned on its crag. Snow continued to fall, and in the east a wild red dawn was breaking. Should he go up to the castle at once and demand to see the Marquis? No, he thought. Well, he wasted time. Those two scoundrels were probably engaged on murdering poor Abapol, who had never done anything worse than pick up an apparently discarded harp in a cave on Fig Hat Ben and put it to rights. Owen turned back resolutely into the tunnel. This time, when he entered the main hall, he thought that he could hear a faint cry coming from an entrance he had not yet tried. Summoning the last of his energy, he ran to it and made his way down a steep, narrow descent. At the foot of this slope, he tumbled. Before he could stop himself over an 8-foot drop into a small sandy cave, lit faintly by a slit high in the wall above him. The sea's roar was plainly to be heard. Evidently, the slit gave onto the beach. In fact, as he pulled himself to his feet on the damp floor, a spray of icy salt water showered in through the holes. It was clear that this must be the cave mentioned by Prigman, which filled when the tide was high. Owen heard the faint sound again. Behind him he spun around and distinguished a small trussed figure lying in the gloom, but the harp of Teritu was gone. "Eh, dear sir," exclaimed Owen in distress. "Did those brutes leave you like that? Only a minute. I will get you undone." It took a bit longer than that, for Owen had lent his knife to Hwaffa. When the hair needed skinning, and had never had it back. At length, however, he had the last of Bilk's savagely tied knots undone. The reward he received was that Abapol flew at him like a fury, biting, kicking, and clawing. "Hey!" protested Owen, fighting to protect his eyes and spectacles from this uncalled-for attack. "Give over! Leave me alone! Stop it! Stop it! I haven't taken the harp! Oh, do stop, for goodness sakes, otherwise we shall never catch up with that pair of scoundrels!" Abapol either did not understand or did not choose to. He continued to bite and kick. How long the struggle would have lasted, as Owen was concerned not to hurt his furious little attacker, there was no knowing. But a mass of water suddenly slopped through the opening and soaked them both. When they rose, gasping, Owen realized that the water in the cave was already over his knees and nearly came to Abapol's chin. "This is stupid," Owen exclaimed. "No use staying here to be drowned. Up you go, sir." And with a final effort, he picked up the scratching, struggling Abapol, who weighed no more than a truss of straw, and thrust him onto the rock shelf, which sloped up to the entrance. Abapol immediately turned and hissed at him like an angry goose. "Now, sir, if you will be so kind as to give me a bit of a hand." But Abapol, without the slightest indication of having any such intention, turned and scurried up the slope, leaving Owen submerged up to his chest in seawater, gaping after him. And we will pause. And that is the end of chapter 12, I should say.